Welcome to Mindboost Moments, the podcast for people rebelling against mediocrity. I'm Caleb, and I'm here with other people who refuse to accept the soul-crushing status quo. These are the change makers, innovators, and the ones who make people leap out of bed excited to grow and become extraordinary. So join me as we explore how remarkable people transform workplaces or human potential, one conversation at a time. This is Mindboost Moments. The thing that I have been rattling around in my head for a couple of days actually is we're Mindboost are attending LPI Learning Live in London in September, and I was at a Learning Live Network event last week, and they said the top 5 challenges of people signing up to attend that event. Number 1 was AI and adoption of AI, but at number 4 there was culture and engagement, and that's one of the biggest challenges in the L&D community. And I know on the last podcast that we did, we spoke a little bit about culture. So I really wanted to delve into what engagement means or how we can interpret that and some of the ways that we at Mindboost look to solve that challenge, really. And that was the big topic of today is what does engagement mean and how do we drive better engagement in our learning? Before I do that, I just got some sort of statistics that I've been uncovering which are really interesting and might connect with people. So apparently 70% of employees feel disengaged during corporate training sessions. And I've fact-checked this as well against a number of different tools. So this is from learning and development, heads of learning and development within large corporate businesses. 70% are saying that they think that their employees are disengaged. Well, that's massive. So only 30% of people are engaged.
Yeah.
And is that?
I can see that. I could see that in the wide spectrum of digital learning out there. I think the general brunt of it is probably not very engaged.
Is that
people.
digital learning, or is it?
It's as a whole. So corporate training. So that's a combination of digital, classroom, virtual. And I mean, we could delve deeper into that 70%, but that's like, there's a massive problem, but there's a massive opportunity, isn't there? So that's the first statistic I uncovered, which sort of slapped me in the face. And one that made me think, why are we accepting that? The other statistic, only 17% of organizations report having metrics to measure a lot of that as well. So again, somewhere we've defined that only 30% of people are engaged, but only 17% of businesses are really measuring engagement and seeing what they can do with it. And then the biggest sort of narrative behind that is our learners are physically present, but mentally they've checked out. So they're just going through the motions without emotional investment or any true desire to apply what they're learning. And so that could paint a really dire picture, but I almost wanted to flip it and go, well, what are the things that we're doing to really leverage that never happening?
I mean, us as a company, would you say?
I just think a mixture, really. So
what could we do?
What comes to mind as to why? Because the first thing that I always think about is when we step into a discovery session with a client, we'll always lead with, how do you want people to feel? And like what's the connection emotionally? Like, straight away, that's the first question, right? So not, what's the information you want to present? What's the feeling that you want to generate in someone? So why? Well, that's not a difficult question, right? But why is more people not asking it?
Then it's that idea that it might just be a bit of a tick box exercise to get this learning done. I mean, I'm a strong advocate of kind of user research and just seeing, and I think we talked about this before, who are the people, the end users of this product or the learning that we're creating, and making sure we cater to their needs, their feelings, what they would like out of it, and not just for the kind of, like you said, the companies kind of what do they want? Like, yeah.
But when Owens talks about feelings, how do we, so that, like in a big corporate environment, how do you then distill that down into, how do we get the best feelings from individuals?
It's interesting, isn't it, with the topic of engagement? Because I'd say engagement or make it engaging, that's like the number one buzzword in digital learning, or maybe even in corporate learning. We hear it from every single person we talk to. We want to make it engaging. And I suppose part of our job is to find out what people mean by that. Do they want people to be engaged so that some metric is hit? Or is it so that some behavior is changed? Do they want to create a feeling? So I think our jobs to start with are to dig a bit deeper with that engagement and what does it mean?
I think so. Just interpreting that, I think there is a difference in engagement in a product and engagement in from a person, because I know that I've been in projects where people say we want more engagement in this piece of digital learning. What they're actually talking about is interaction and activities in a piece of learning. Now that doesn't equal engagement in a person. And then you've got to think that engagement, is that engagement with the subject? Is that engagement in the organization? And so it's those emotional triggers, isn't it, that we're really scraping back at?
Yeah, and I think it's important to make that distinction. Are you talking about engaging with the piece of learning itself, or are you talking about engaging with the subject in a real world kind of situation day to day? And one doesn't necessarily follow the other. So yeah, it's important to figure out which of those things you're aiming for. Of course, we hope it's more of the real world impact engagement. And that's where we start looking at feelings. And I suppose when we're thinking about how to create a feeling and a lasting memory and an impact with corporate training in a big corporate company, we start by thinking about how the audience currently feel about the subject. And, that could be such a broad spectrum of feelings, but it's important that we have a realistic view of that. And then we can look at the feelings that we want to create. And then we sort of know where we're starting and where we want to get to. And then we can build some metrics into that and find a way to measure how people feel about it.
And I'm just thinking, Owen, as well, from a design point of view, what are the levers that you can pull then to try and align that connection, feeling, emotion
Well,
with the
I
subject?
was just literally thinking that. I think there's two ways of looking at it. And the way Lily and yourself were kind of coming from, it's the engagement in the subject matter and the thing that they're trying to achieve. Whereas from my perspective, as a kind of UI UX designer, I'm keen to kind of getting their engagement in actually using the product and doing the learning, because I feel that's a very large issue in it, where I speak from experience as well, where it's just like, oh, I need to sit down at this computer and just kind of click next and go through it. And there's no excitement there. The person's feeling like this is a job that they don't want to do. They've probably got loads of other tasks that they need to do in their day, but I want to kind of create an exciting, interactive kind of program, and that will help enable them to learn. And I know we keep on using the word engage now in this conversation, but get them excited to engage not only in the program itself, but by doing that, then getting them to engage in the actual subject matter, and that feeling for that. It's all encompassing, I think. And yeah, from my perspective, I like to create, very engaging programs.
I think so we think about either the product or the piece of learning, but also the subject, and then, the business, the team, but all of that is an experience. I guess that's like what you're going through by experiencing that piece of learning, how you feel, what you think your next step is. I suppose you could like blanket that over the word experience. So am I engaged in this experience? And then as a result of that experience, do I feel connected with what I need to do and the business that I work in and the team? I think that's how I would balance in my head. Like, think about the overall experience, and that then covers what we're trying to, that powerful internal feeling that you get through doing something, the connection, but also the excitement. And I really like that word as well, the excitement that you feel when you're doing a piece of learning. Because if I just paraphrase some of the feedback that L&D professionals are saying, as we've already said, learners are physically present but mentally checked out, right? That's a common theme. Employees just click through the training without actually learning. But how often have we just said, we've seen there's a blueprint there for what digital learning looks like. And that's why there's such a negative feeling about e-learning. Oh, it's just got a next button. You go through pages and pages and pages. And then the other one I've got, training just feels like a chore. Employees see it as a tick box activity, whereas there's no excitement there.
So yeah, I mean, to help, that's exactly the issue I find. And yeah, to help that, we can build up excitement into using the learning instead of it's just not this tick box. I've got to go sit there for half an hour. The use of kind of campaigns we've talked about, kind of getting people to talk about the learning with others, so they find that it's not just them going and doing this learning, it's a conversation piece that, again, kind of advocates connections with others. And then, yeah, when we create the product itself, make it interesting, make use of storytelling, use of kind of subtle animations and motion, just to really engage the user. And obviously, again, think about the user and what they may be doing, whether they're young, old, everything like that. Make sure it's kind of catered for their needs. Yeah, basically create a product that's produces excitement, something they'd be like, oh, have you sat down and done this learning yet? It's good for, like, it's crazy. It's not it's not this normal click, read this, do an MCQ answer. Did you get it right? If you didn't, try it again numerous times till you eventually get it right. Actually spread it out, allow the user to absorb that learning, and yeah, use technology to do that we've got capabilities of.
What else are you thinking, Lily?
I think I was just reflecting on training that I've done and I've personally found engaging. And I think for me, the things that kind of show me that I'm finding something engaging are that I'm constantly thinking, how can I apply this? Or I'm excited to try this, or how could I do this in my day to day? It's the jump, I think, from the experience to actually how I'm going to use it. And I think, that for me is what makes it engaging, exciting as well. Yeah, sort of inspiring, keeps me going in the training. Yeah, and then I leave with the feeling of, okay, I'm excited. I'm maybe a bit nervous to try this, but I've kind of got some motivation and some forward motion.
I'm glad you said that as well, that when you're remembering the last piece of training that we did, I felt really curious. I wanted to, and I'm just replaying it in my head. We didn't show everything. We didn't present everything that our client wanted to. And it made me feel really curious to go and learn more. And that was quite exciting, actually. And I'm just like, how often, again, do we get into conversations with businesses where they go, this is all the information that we need to present? And there's this pushback that says, hold on a second, that's too much, or it's not going to resonate. And there's that period where you go, well, why do you need to present it? Or we must present it because that's, legal or mandated. And yet, for me, the most compelling learning I've done recently didn't show everything. And I just wanted to go off and learn because of the way that it was presented, but also the language and the style that it was presented in. Because I'm just also replaying what Owen said about making a piece of learning exciting. And then what did we do sort of, 10 years ago? We said gamification's the best way forward because that gets everyone excited and badges. And yet I'm reading an article that says what's been tried and what fell short gamification and badges is at the top of that list.
Well, you've got to try, I guess.
Yeah.
The argument. I keep on harking on. There's a lot of talk about storytelling, and I think it's valuable, and the use of language and interactions. But we may find in however few years' time that may have missed the mark again. But we've got to try and see the results.
I feel like with any of these sort of trends that come up in digital learning, gamification or storytelling, whatever it is, I'm sure they could be really impactful, but as long as they're used in the right way and in the right situation, it's not just a blanket, gamify everything and it will make everything impactful.
Yeah.
That's very true. Yeah, the use of that stats, because probably everyone was like, well, this is what we need. I heard it's got to be gamified. And you're like, it doesn't work for that subject matter. It doesn't work for your end user. That's not what they're interested in. Like, yeah, completely right.
I had
And
quite a,
use it in the right situations.
yeah. I had quite a tricky pitch once. This was going back a while. Where a customer had come to us and said, this is the subject we want. I can't remember, it was some financial thing, and we want it to be gamified. And when we dug into that and asked, okay, what's your thinking behind gamification here? Their only reason was, we want to make it engaging. And I think that's probably when gamification, the sort of buzz around it, was at its height. But it was quite a hard one because obviously that's not really a reason to gamify something. It's more of a specific set of, it's a specific situation in which you'd use gamification, not just blanket slap it on to make it more engaging.
Yeah.
And I think it was quite a hard thing to do, to sort of unpick it and try and get to the root of what's actually going on. Is gamification right, or is some other treatment going to be the way to go?
And that could have been, I mean, that's a similar conversation to when we get into compliance training conversations. This is a content that needs presenting, and we sort of forget about, why do we care about people, and what's the memorable thing that people need to step away from that. And so I suppose that's a similar conversation that can predispose with, we need gamification. It might have been they'd seen it somewhere else, they like the look of that, but it's sort of superficial at that point, rather than, understand what's the outcome that we're really striving for.
Yeah.
I mean, what the sort of the guardrails that we put in place, I'm thinking, to go, let's not go down a route of focusing on what a person needs to learn, rather than, why this is important to them and why we want to get them excited. What do we sort of do in the process?
Well, I think to start with, we try to not think about what the solution is. We start first trying to understand what is the situation, what's actually going on, before we then move towards, okay, what are our options solution-wise? Because I think
that's all. Do you think I'm just thinking that that's okay for us sometimes, because we play that role in sort of a curious and naive sort of consultative approach to go, why is this happening? Tell me a bit more about it. Do you think everyone that's working internally with stakeholders feels that comfortable to do that?
it's probably more tricky for our clients internally. Is that what you mean? Like our customers that we're working with?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, if you've got an internal learning developer, so what we see is that a lot of our clients also have an internal, what they call an e-learning developer, but we'll challenge and prod and poke and find out some of the questions from a real curiosity point of view, and start with a blank canvas. And exactly to your point, why? What's the ambition? What's going on here? Do you think an internal e-learning developer would approach it the same?
I mean, it's hard to say, really. I suppose we don't have the sort of politics of the company, and we don't feel the whatever stress is going on
the
within
pressures
the
from stakeholders,
organization, and all the pressure. So it's kind of easier for us to come in as outsiders and say, okay, we're starting afresh.
Yeah.
Like learning consultants kind of coming in.
But that And again, that's been a big talk, is how can L&D operate in a more consultative approach? And sometimes, maybe not operating in a consultative way is actually fueling that lack of engagement.
Yeah, I think as a smaller company compared to some of the really big corporate e-learning companies, we have an advantage there because I feel that we're giving a lot of care and attention to every project, and collectively, I feel like we really, really care about each project that we work on. And I feel like I've been part of big corporate companies producing learning, and it kind of feels like a bit more, okay, now we've got this project, get this project hand over, move on to the next one.
Quite the
And
conveyor belt, isn't it?
yeah, conveyor belt is quite a good way of describing it. I mean, I'm not trying to throw shade on anyone else. It's just a different type of company.
Yeah.
I feel like we've got I don't know, it's in our culture at Mindboost, I think, to really care about each project and get into the detail, be really specific, be really curious about it, and then come up with the right solution.
And challenge, I think. I think that's the thing that, because it's like, why? That's such a simple question, isn't it? Why is that? Why is that a decision you've made? Why is that a problem? What's happening underneath? Share that information. Is there a different way that we can look at it? And to the point of, can we go and speak with some people as well? I mean, not everyone wants us to, but there's always that question there. Can we go and speak to someone who's experienced this and understanding, like, what's their problems? What are their challenges? Like, what's restricting them from learning this? Is this type of content going to connect with them? I think that's the other thing that I've not really experienced from any other providers is, like, can we really delve deep on this?
Yeah, we definitely put in that extra effort, I believe. But I think that's, like Lily mentioned, and I feel that we're all very passionate people about it, and we do have that extra care. We're very we're genuinely interested in learning the subject matter and learning about the company that we're working for, and then using our knowledge to produce something that we're proud of, not just, there we go, here's another course.
Delivered,
There's your subject
done.
matter, here's another course, here's the bill, right, next. We're very invested in everything we produce.
And then I'm just moving on, like, some of the research that I've been finding is that the dream outcome for L&D and businesses around the training is employees who want to learn. Again, most people want to learn, don't they? But there's a perceived, I don't want to learn in that way. I want to learn how I learn, maybe, or I want to learn from really interesting content. So, none of this changes our narrative or our conversation. This is like, I'm just sort of raising this to the surface from what L&D is saying, and we're going, yeah, well, that sounds obvious. What's the blocker? They're saying learning is celebrated, so it's not a chore but an opportunity for growth. It's got a real world impact on there that's measurable, and it changes what I'm doing daily. And then the other one was organic advocacy, people saying, just like we've already said, you've got to go and do that learning, it's amazing, or it'll get you thinking, or it'll really help you. I suppose that's the if people say you've got to do that learning, it's really going to help you, rather than oh, you've got to do that learning,
Yeah.
there you go. I know. I'm just thinking of the conversations that we've all sort of experienced with, say, a new starter, and they'll go, okay, we'll see you next week then when you've done the learning, rather than, oh my God, I can't wait to show you this. It's so funny, really, when you do sort of start talking about it, that why have we not? Well, I think we've got the answer right. And it's not sort of rocket science. It's about emotion and feeling and excitement and energy and all of that. But why? I'm still asking why. Why is a business like not gone, yeah, we get it?
There's a lot of businesses out there. There's a lot of learning companies out there. And they just want to get the quick buck and get it done, I think. Budgetary, everything like that. Yeah, I think there's probably very few learning providers like us that genuinely care, I think.
Do you
I
think?
think there's also, sorry, I was just going to say, I think there's also lots of ways to do it. And to your point earlier about metrics and people not really measuring the impact of their learning initiatives, it makes it quite difficult
Yeah.
to say, like, this is the thing that works, so we're all going to do that. So I think learning companies and individuals end up sort of doing what they think works, what they feel works, what they've seen works, but maybe not what's been proven to work.
I
So it's quite a tricky, yeah, I don't think there's a recipe. Yeah, not a direct recipe.
I
So
guess
maybe
like
that's why we
Caleb,
haven't all landed at the same place.
because you did mention earlier, Caleb, and that is true. Everyone does learn differently as well. So yeah, I like that.
And every business is different, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I guess that's why, I mean, that's another topic all on itself, but that's why we lean into bespoke. I mean, Owen, you and I were having this conversation the other day. When we talk about bespoke digital learning, a lot of our customers will think that that's the product. The product is bespoke, but it's the whole process. You know, right from discovery to the delivery of that piece of learning, that's bespoke. The conversations, there's no playbook around that other than be curious and find out what the challenge is and how best to solve it. They're the two things that you sort of know are pretty much given. The bit in between is all bespoke. And I think that's a real point to clarify, actually. Those conversations, you know, you might have crib sheets that you go through that you've been through the previous product and you've got experience from that, but it is pretty much different for every piece of content. For every, you know, even clients, you might have built up a sort of a back catalogue of how, you know, certain clients like things and behave, but each project with them has got to be treated completely differently. You know, the other thing that I'm just going to tease in the last couple of minutes is when we said, well, what's the real pain point to not doing piece of learning that connects with people on an emotional level and thinks about beyond that content. It could be we don't know if the impact has been successful. We're not measuring stuff, and potentially budget. But again, both of those things. So budget, it just seems to me that people are spending an awful lot of money on stuff that isn't really making an impact. We've just seen it, 70% are disengaged. And yet most L&D people are saying that that's my biggest challenge. I want people to be engaged. And you don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds to try and drive that. So it seems to me that that's not really a challenge. The challenge is, how do you prove impact, you know, for that budget, and how do you think that things have changed?
I mean, this would be a great conversation to have with an L&D manager, because we're obviously coming at it from our outside perspective as the provider, and like you said, we're just like, it's a no-brainer. Why is this not being done? To find out from those, because various politics, budgetary reasons, it would be interesting to find out.
Yeah. I mean, so we know from a success story that, you know, back to story have partnered with a company called the Happiness Index that do all the analytics to measure how people are feeling. And actually that helps us to go, part of the solution to how you want your team to feel is the training that we've created for you. And then they can see those metrics reflected in this happiness index. And again, if like, it doesn't have to be that solution. It could be, a sort of a marker in the sand to go, how's people feeling? As simple as that. I wonder if we try and over-engineer what the questions are, whereas our conversations with the likes of Baxter Story, they've said, we have got the metrics, but we've also got the feeling, the emotional stuff that we're seeing and feeling, and we document that.
Yeah. And I mean, even how people feel about things is something that can be captured with a really simple survey.
Yeah.
Or just one pulse question on an LMS.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can all be, you can always have a look before and after.
Do you know, there's so much because you've just made me think as well, is maybe teams don't want to ask the pulse questions because they don't actually want the answer. They just want to keep going around and around. You'd like to think not, you'd like to think actually the information that we're finding out on what heads of L&D want is validated.
Yeah. And I think sometimes a piece of learning will be in circulation for a few years.
Yeah.
Especially with compliance, people aren't likely to redo it every year. So if they find out, well, actually people don't feel very good about this piece of training, or it's not really doing anything,
We've got to do something.
Yeah, we've got to do something. And that might not be, within their sort of plans and budgets and things. So yeah, you're right. It could be a sort of a fear of finding out, but it's always better to know, isn't it?
Well, I think so, because you can't say actually 70% of our organisation are disengaged and then go, I really want them engaged, but I don't want to do anything about it. I don't want to change anything, because like if you want change to happen, you've got to go through some stretch on that, right? That seems quite logical to me. Else everything just stays the same, and then we'll be revisiting this next year and going, surprise, surprise, lack of engagement has moved up the scale now. Well, what have people done about it? Not a great deal.
Yes, it's a big subject, isn't it? The metrics.
It is, and I think maybe we sort of hold that thought for another conversation as well. Is like I'd love to get to why do we think we've got a solution that nobody's tapping into, and just trying to uncover that a little bit. Like that's the utopia, right? I've got a quick win here. If only I do X. Like what's the X that people need to do?
Yeah, I think actually often at the beginning of a project, if we ask the question, and what are the metrics here? What are we measuring specifically? That's something that not everyone has actually considered by the start of a project. Yeah. They've commissioned a piece of learning and they know what they want it to be about, but haven't actually thought about how to measure it. Yeah. So maybe it's an education piece that people need to know a bit more about, and that we can sort of help people with more along the way.
And then actually, just going back to Owen's language of a campaign, not just about the learning content, but the campaign should be we've launched the piece of learning and we've launched the metrics to measure impact on that. And that, as you've said, Lily, that could be pulse surveys, it could be a larger survey, but that's got to be worked into it. So someone commissioning that piece of learning also feels really confident that they're going to be able to measure impact at some point when asked. Hey, I love it. God, we could go on and on about this subject, but there you go. Hey, thank you so much for your time today. I'm sure we're going to revisit this again, because I don't think that's going away, that topic, and it's something that's really close to all of us.
Yeah, well, as I said, try to get a L&D head of L&D involved.
That would be nice. A guest on the next poddy.
Yeah,
love it. Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you're ready to join the uprising against mediocre learning, don't let the conversation end here. Subscribe to Mindboost Moments wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're tired of soul-crushing e-learning that puts people to sleep in your business, it's time to experience what happens when digital learning makes people leap out of bed with excitement. Just visit us at mindboostlearning.com.